we gonna
stories.
do before we wait?
What?
I'm sorry. Before we, how we doing this? Are you asking the question or what?
I've got a whole list of questions.
Okay, well, don't get mad. Let's throw.
Well, you
Damn,
messed up.
are we recording this bullshit? I
Yes,
hope
we
so.
are.
Okay.
And I'm going to
well,
play it to let people know how you.
All right. Well,
me.
I'm glad you're going to play it because now they see what I got to deal with on a weekly basis there.
Welcome to Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw, and that would be the WWE Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And this is a special Q&A session for a very good reason, because as Dutch Mantel says, if I was any smarter, I'd be stupid. Yesterday, we had a great show, wonderful show with Bill DeMott. It was excellent. One of the best shows we've ever done. And somehow he got lost on my computer and we don't have it.
Well, that's, when I'm dealing with Texas out there, now you guys understand exactly what I go through. John's a very bright guy when it comes to the wrestling business and when it comes to the Wall Street business. There's nobody better than this man, but technology was not on his plate, on his course load at Abilene Christian University.
The Harvard of the
I don't
South.
even think they didn't even have internet. You and Al Gore hadn't invented the internet when you was in college, right?
That's right. Me and Al Gore invented the internet years after my college.
Yeah. And then Bruce came along and put social media in and really screwed it up.
I remember when computers, when typewriters first started getting better, not just way before computers.
I was good to type. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. You
were back when you were writing hieroglyphics, weren't you?
Yeah, I was back when we were sending smoke signals. Just to get it out, John.
Well, we got a bunch of questions. And I want to start with probably the best question. And I got these off of our Twitter and off of Facebook. Rob, and there's like a whole at something, but it went by Rob, asked, why is Tiger King Mr. Brisco's fault? And there was a hashtag, one of his Rizats. That's what he said. Hashtag one of his Rizats.
Well, are you sure you're not the guy that sent the question in?
No, it wasn't. There was a guy named Rob.
Okay. Well, do you know Ron, though, right?
No, I don't know Rob. He sent the question in because you live.
But he obviously got that question from your constantly harassing me. Now I'll tell my side of the story. Then you can tell the fictional side of the story, your side of the story. My side of the story is, yes, I grew up in southeastern Oklahoma, close to where Joe Exotic lives. But he
the fifth free bird.
Yeah, the meth bird. We can just call him the meth bird. We'll probably get in trouble for that. Probably get sued. I hope you got good attorneys for me. But anyway, I grew up in that area, so they chose that area, one of the most beautiful spots in the world, to film this series. And then Carol Baskin, who has Big Tiger Rescue, is approximately 3.5 miles due south of my house there. And I see Carol every once in a while at the old shopping center, at the grocery store. And she said, hello, Mr. Brisco. And I say, hello, Mr. Baskin back. We say hello. And so that's my extent of having an effect on the Tiger King. I was just a victim of circumstances. We're both the major stars. Brandon, one of them's an Okie, and he's a meth head, but he wasn't an original Okie. I think he came from south of the Red River originally and wanted to come up to God's country up in Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma, and made his home up there and started rescuing these tigers. And then he got a little carried away, as most Texans do, and started trying to profit on these good animals breed. And so that is my extent of it. And John has a much better story than what I have about it. And John, go into it.
It doesn't seem like a coincidence to me, Mr. Brisco. You're by that fifth free bird that looked like Michael Hayes' son on meth, moonwalking around his tigers, and then all of a sudden you move right next to Carol Baskin. I don't see any coincidence whatsoever in that.
Well, no, it's hard for you to see that, through the haze and all that stuff. But facts are facts. I'm sure there's other questions. Okay,
There
we
are other
move
questions.
on.
We did a Michael Cole and JBL show or something like that one time on YouTube, and we went up to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and Frank Gaddy's is Frank from Oklahoma, and they had the tiger rescue. So we filmed some stuff there. I always supported them. I love what they do. Well, the feds were doing some investigation into them about something. Do they classify themselves as a zoo? Do they classify this? I don't know what it was. It was ridiculous. They do a wonderful job with those animals. And they called us because we said on the video we were helpers at the zoo. And they said, "Are you guys employed?" And I said, "You understand this? We had a talking bear. We had Daniel Bryan in a bear costume on the show." And I said, "You realize that this is all fiction?" And they said, "Oh, the show's fiction?" that's
That's
how
our federal
smart our feds
government.
are.
That's our federal government we're paying for. Huh?
All right, Michelle Falconer asked.
Hey, Michelle.
Michelle, she's a great fan and probably a great person. I don't know her. I get a lot of comments from her. Seems very nice. She says, "What era would you want to be in if you weren't in the era that you were in to wrestle?" That's a question.
Okay, well, John, when you get a serious question like that, you just can't rattle something off. You got to really put some thought waves, and that's a really good question. And I've often thought about it. There's two answers to it. The one answer is, man, I'd love to be working in these days and times and cashing in on some of the bucks that these young men and women are cashing in on, and so it's a glorious time to be in the business, and but also I really think and you're going to make some wisecrack remarks, but when I come along, it was really the changing of the guards, the Dory Funk Juniors, the Jack Briscoe, the Terry Funks, the Harley Races. All those guys were just starting to come along, replacing guys like Luther, Gorgeous George, Gene Koniski, Fritz Von Erich, and Bob Geigel and Vern Gagne. So I come along during a change of era, but also just like any other era, some of those people are still hanging on. So you got to meet them, and you got to share dressing room space with some of the legends that I remember. I think back, man, and those guys, my age group likes to talk about the miles that we put on. Your age group likes to talk about the days and the consecutive days in a row they had to work. But these guys back there, you start to think, and I experienced a little bit of it, where you made a lot of your trips by train or by buses. Just think how hard of a schedule that must have been for some of these guys. I mean, I experienced one time I got on a train in Louisiana, in Bossier City, Louisiana. I went all the way to Wichita Falls, Texas on that train and worked that night. Got off the train about 6:30, 5 o'clock, 6:30 in the afternoon. Got me a cab over the Fairgrounds Coliseum and went to the dressing room and worked that night, and then got a ride back to Oklahoma City home. So I experienced, but I often think, that was really a golden age, right before my time frame come in, and just one generation back, I think I would have been happy as could be, and really enjoyed that style because it was snug, hard work, and I loved the Dick Murdochs, the Stan Hansons, the guys that were right on top of you and, making you wrestle back and making you fight back. So,
yeah.
And I think,
I'm sorry. And my answer would be one of two eras, I think. I think this era, because they're making so much money, obviously, but also the era when you had TV first come into existence, around Gorgeous George era, Buddy Rogers. I thought that was a real cool golden age we had. And also the 80s when you had territories, you could go from early 80s. When you were there, you go from territory to territory and find work and basically travel the world. It was some pretty cool times, pretty cool eras in wrestling.
And life was hard then too, John, as you know. I mean, those territory guys. I mean, you know, some of us were really fortunate where we got with a promotion that really liked you and wanted to keep you around. And so they made it worth your time to stay around. But a lot of those guys that you were working with, man, you know, they come in and about 6 months later, they come up to be shaking your hand, you know, hey man, it's been great. You know, I'll see you down the road. Where you headed? Well, you're in Carolina. Well, I'm headed out to Amarillo or something like that. You know, these guys migrated across the United States. It had to be so rough on their family life and their kids, you know, growing up school to school, city to city. But man, those guys were the dedicated guys of our business too.
Yeah, Matt Carter asked the most dangerous crowd you've ever been in.
You know, I'll answer that right off. There's a couple of them, but what I would probably the most scared of my life. I mean, I've been in some situations in Puerto Rico where they were after the hills. And I mean, we've all heard the horror stories coming out of Puerto Rico about crowd control down there. I mean, they encouraged to be unruly in the crowd down there, and it was great being a baby face and watching, you know. And sometimes you had to jump in the middle and help a heel out. But the most frightened I probably ever was, and you only get a kick out of this, was I was in Lubbock, Texas. Slatton, Don Slatton's old town, a lawman who arrested Billy Saul Estes. You'll know who Billy Saul Estes is.
Of course I do.
Kid out there. He's a Texas legend. You know, the rest of you youngins out there can Google Billy Saul Estes. But Don Slatton's the one that arrested him. So the Funks made him a promoter there, you know, to capitalize on the name there. The one night I'm there, my brother and I were wrestling the Funk Brothers. And needless to say, the place is packed, you know, a bunch of drunk cowboys on a Thursday or Friday night, whatever night it is. There's always a bunch of drunk cowboys in Texas. You can find them anywhere, down the local drugstore, anywhere. They're drunks all over the place in Texas. Not that that's a bad thing to be, but we work a simple little deal, John, where Jack goes for the figure four on Dory, and Dory kicks him off, and Terry puts an elbow up against it. Well, that's a heel move. Well, as Terry's putting that elbow up, and of course, what's that do? That distracts the referee. So the referee goes over with Terry, hey, you can't hit him like that. So Junior's laying right there down with that the figure four on it. So I just raise his head up. I'm on the outside like Terry was, and I give it a big old left, knock his ass out. Jack turned around and covered him. 1, 2, 3. Simple ass finish. Not a lot of heat, you know. Terry started it, and the Briscoes finished it. But boy, those damn drunk ass Texans didn't see it that way. They just come swarming the ringside. So I roll in the ringside too. And of course, the Funks roll out and they're fighting their way through, and that distracts them a little bit. But after they create that path, and that path close up, all those guys' attention. There, we had to nail a couple of guys coming out, and that ring started getting full, and I'm starting to get a little worried. All of a sudden, I see like an ocean, like the Red Sea party, damn Red Sea parts, and I look out, and it's Killer Carl Cox. He's got like a 10-foot chain, and he's swinging it around. And I looked at Jack. Jack, what are we going to do? And he said, just get underneath Carl and stay as close as you can. So Carl got close to the ring. We rolled out. He cleared that path with that chain. We probably had a 10-foot circulation around there. So we were underneath Carl. We made it back to the dressing room. As soon as we got in the dressing room, the Hills were trying to kick down the door. Our fans were. They kicked down the door. About the time they got the door down, the cops were back there and pushed them back. But I tell you, if it hadn't been for Killer Carl Cox, I don't know what would have happened. We were outnumbered.
We had in Texas one time coming back out of the ring. I think we let the Von Erich boys laying, and some fan hit Killer Tim Brooks across the face with a whiskey bottle, and it cut him all the way down his face. And that tough old man, he didn't blink. He beat that fan half. Dick Murdoch looked at me. He goes, "Pile in, kid." We piled in and we fought our way to the back. But I think the most dangerous probably was in Vienna and it wasn't a riot yet, but it got a lot of heat one night. So the local Vienna security wouldn't help you because they're, they're mad at you too, because you're fighting their favorites. So I'm trying to get to the back. All the heels have come out of the dressing room to help me get to the back. And I was not aware that right behind me, somebody had pulled a butterfly knife. And apparently he made a big deal of it. He pulled it out. He did it all around. And he's going to stick me in the back with it. And Finley sees him. And Fit comes by me and shoves me. And I thought, oh, my God, now even Finley's fighting me.
He's saving
the one guy that can help me. But he's saving me from getting stabbed. And when the guy sees Finley, he throws down the knife and runs and jumps over a fence. And that's the last we saw the guy. But that was the reputation Finley had in Europe. But I don't know what would have happened, but he was going to stick a knife in my back. And Finley came to the rescue.
That's all. John, I got a question. I've often wondered, how was the security? Or you guys worked the same venue, like 7, 8 nights in a row? Was it the same people? Was it different crowds? Did you build a heat as you're going along? How did you guys program those stuff like that?
Yeah, that's right. You would have like in Hanover, you'd have an 8-week program. So you'd have an 8-week program with the guys. So you do a tournament, but inside the tournament, you'd have certain angles that would break out. So you'd have challenge night where I could challenge somebody in the tournament because I'm mad at them, challenge them to a strap fight or challenge them to an American match, which was a 20 on count out on the floor, or some type of cage match or some type of specialty match. But you'd have the same fans come every single night. So everything had to be different and everything got built up slowly. You'd save some of your stuff early to do it later. Security was usually pretty good, but that night in Vienna was like a 50-cent or dollar beer night. And so everybody was drunk. It was a hot night and everybody was, all worked up over the heat. And when they would, Otto would send the heels out to save whoever's out there in the ring because you couldn't count on security. Those guys, I don't know what they're making, but they're local guys. They don't want to fight local friends that they know. And so Otto would always send out the heels if somebody was getting too much heat. We had to go one time in Vienna and save Finley one time. Finley had wrestled an old referee, Mick McMichael, and just got so much heat. And we all had to pile out and make sure Dave got to the back. And back then it was, man, if you see the old tape of Terry Gordy pushing that fan down in Texas. I mean, that's how it was,
it was brutal. I mean, one of my very first attending matches when I was a kid, I think I was still in high school, and Danny Hodge, of course, was the big hero. And he was wrestling a guy just passed away a couple of years ago, Angelo Savolti. Angelo lived to be like 101, 102 years old. Very, very bright man, very good man. But man, he come out to Oklahoma, and he's talking that talk, and you realize this is early '60s, so there was still animosity towards migrants coming in. So Savoldi played that Italian migrant thing to the hilt, and what a heel he was. So he of course, Hodge was the All-American babyface from Oklahoma and all this stuff and everything. So they had a match. Hodge's dad wasn't smart. Hodge and his dad didn't have a very good relationship. And so I'm sitting in the back row ringside, and Hodge's old man's on the front row ringside. So I got the but as the melee's happening, I get closer. Hodge is doing one of these supercell jobs for Savoldi. I mean, just supercell jobs. And all of a sudden, Savoldi throws Daddy out on the side where his dad is. And I'm like maybe 15 rows behind his dad there. When he throws him out towards his dad, of course, his dad stands up and Savoldi, typical heel, rolls out, hey, this your boy? You want your boy? I slapped him around a little bit. And then throws him right into the old man, rolls into the ring. By the time Savoldi rolls into the ring, Hodge's old man's in the ring. He's got one of those, not big Bowie knife, but he's got one of those little sharp-ass pen knives, all those country folks, you grew up around that, all they carry those little sharp-ass pocket knives, right?
Oh, yeah.
He whips that baby out. He starts slicing, and he slices Angelo 100 and some odd since Danny gets in, he's trying to break his old man up. The old man turns just in a rage and slices Danny. And now Danny's got 50 cents in his damn side of the gas. And I'm like, holy shit, man, this is wild. And by the time security gets there, the old man had rolled out. Of course, nobody's going to stooge off Danny Hodges, old man. Who was it? Well, we don't know. He just ran through.
That's awesome.
Well, what a
John Mosier asked, what is one move that you turned down? And I'll answer first. And I hated this because when I was wrestling Cena in like 08, 09, he wanted to put me and Orlando on his shoulders and do a AA to both of us. And I had been hurt so many times. My back was bad. I thought I couldn't take the move. And I thought if I take that move, I won't be able to get up. And I told John, I'm sorry, I'll do anything else, but I can't do it. And that's when I knew that it was time to get out of the ring, because I'd never turned down. I don't think I'd ever turned down anything. And that really bothered me because I wanted to, I didn't want it to look like I didn't want to do something. I just knew I'd get hurt. And that's when I knew I was too old and time to retire and do a podcast.
Well, I'm glad you did.
How about you? Any moves that you turned down?
Yeah, well, it's going to sound kind of strange, but I got a big old ass. That Terry Funk called me Jug Butt for a long time.
You got more ass than a donkey farm.
Yeah, it was either Terry or Murdoch. I can't remember one of them. I was Jug Butt. I was papoose to Murdoch, I think, and Jug Butt to Terry a lot of the time. But backdrop. I mean, I hated a backdrop for some reason. I got where I could take a pretty damn, working with Steamboat and Youngblood in Carolina, I got where I could take a pretty high and pretty good backdrop. But the one hold that they wanted to give to me, and like I said, I got a wide ass, and was that skin the cat. Now I could do the skin the cat, but man, it looked like a pregnant cat trying to get over that top rope there. And I saw it one day. I had them recorded. We were down at the old Sportatorium here in Tampa Sportatorium. And so we had a camera set up. So I wanted to do it. They were wanting me to do it. And I said, well, I did it. And I did it. And Eddie Graham would laugh his ass off every time I attempted it, and then that would make me harder. When you get hot, it's harder to do. So finally I said, I made it over. I thought it looked perfect. I said, okay, let's take a look at it. So they played it back. Man, it was god awful. And so, of course, they all remember, can't get that big ass over the top rope. Well, I could get it over there, but it just wasn't TV quality. So that's what I always, when they say, do the skin the cat, Brisco. No, this cat's got too big an ass to get.
Ian James asked for me, how did I become prosecutor of Wrestlers Court? I don't know. And
I know, because prosecutor. No, that was when you become judge, because Taker wasn't there that day.
Yeah. Taker was always the judge. Hunter filled in a couple times. Taker.
Well, you were always the talker. I mean, you were always the one that was trying to defend or accuse somebody. So they
always the accuser. Yeah.
So they put you up there. I think Undertaker appointed you at that, and he made some pretty good appointees. I got.
Yeah,
say.
He had Godfather or Kane was always the bailiff. We had a lot of fun. A lot of it's been said about Wrestlers Court over the years, but it was, the boys all looked forward to it. It was fun. It was a fun time.
And I've even heard some of the boys kind of just, poop all. But come on, guys. I mean, grow up. It was harmless. It was for morale than I think it was for anybody else. The office sure did, because when the guys come out of that Wrestlers Court, they were laughing, they were in a good mood, then they were ready to get down to business. So it never interfered with the day of TV taping or anything. And it really frustrates me when I see some of the guys that get down on it. And why? I mean, we're working our butts off, and the boys, and well, this guy had to buy 2 cases of beer. Like that's a sin. Go buy 2 cases of beer because you screwed up in the locker room. Come on.
Guys look forward to it for weeks. We'd say we got a Wrestlers Court coming up wherever, in Dallas, Kansas City, wherever it is. guys would look forward to it for weeks. They'd plan their defense, they'd plan their prosecution. It was a lot of fun. It was really creative stuff, and it was a good morale boost for the guys and girls. Linda Fan, who asked us, who is your favorite riding partner?
Oh, well, I always enjoyed riding with my brother because we had so much in common, and we could bitch at each other, and we'd go any further. But other than my brother, I mean, we're both fortunate we had some good friends on the road, and when I had guys like Steve Kern and Jimmy Garvin. I mean, a lot of those guys. Manny Fernandez was a blast, but he was a wild man, crazy man to travel with. But he was a funny man. And of course, Hot Rod, Roddy Piper, Don Morocco. Holy cow. Those were just a few of my favorite ones. And then when I went to WWE, of course, Bruce and JR, I always had to travel with them. Pat Patterson. And that combination of Pat Patterson, Bruce Pritchard, and Jim Ross and myself in a car. I mean, sometimes it was unmerciful. And it wasn't just on Pat, it wasn't just on me, it wasn't just on Bruce or JR. We rotated around where everybody got equal abuse, So. And
well,
nothing was off limits either.
What? Yeah, exactly. I had a couple different cars. Not one of my favorites, obviously, with Ron, but we had Teddy, and Godfather was with us most of the time. That was an awesome car. Those were just good dudes. But when I first got there, I had good dudes. I had Tom Pritchard, I had Al Snow, Dutch Mantell, one of the most entertaining guys in the world. Kane was one of our guys. In Texas, I had Akbar. I rode with Akbar and James Beard, and a lot of times Killer would ride with us. Then I got to ride with Dick Murdoch. I mean, it's just a good time. People ask what you miss. It's like we talked to Bill DeMott yesterday, which it will never air because I lost the recording. He said the one thing I miss is this, talking to you guys, not just us, but talking to the boys. And that's where the really cool stuff happened, because we didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. We just had each other, and we had to entertain each other, and guys were very entertaining.
And you be very creative. Just a road story. Just if I could just throw something in. A very very popular guy that we get a lot of requests to have on, and we're working on having Haku. Now, when I first met Haku, he was Prince Tonga. He was from the Isle of Tonga, and he was called, that was his name. Really very creative name, Prince Tonga. So he come into the territory. When somebody comes into the territory that came in from somewhere else, you just automatically assume that they're able to get around and be able to get from Tampa to Miami or something like this. He came in, he had no car, he had very few dollars in his pocket. Jack and I always had a policy back in our days, and probably even in the beginning of your days, when you had a group of guys in a car, they charge you what we called transportation fees. And I've seen it from 2.5 cents up to whatever it got up to 15 cents, when the gas was $5 a gallon. It's ridiculous. You got to go to the damn town anyway. Why not, if you're going, have some company. So Jack and I, we always hated that policy. So when a young guy would come into the territory, Jack and I had a reputation. We'd like to party while we were on the road, have a few beers and everything. That's for open container laws and all that stuff. But it wasn't before drunken driving. So we would get a rookie, and the rule was the rookie would have to drive the car for us while we partied and everything. So Haku comes in, and we had an old guy down in the office, ex-wrestler, Charlie Lay, used to run the transportation. He called, "Hey, Brisco, we got you a rookie. We got you a new driver." Okay, great. Then we'll be at the office at 3:00. Okay. Go down there, and that's Haku. We introduce ourselves. He speaks good enough English to communicate and everything. Jack throws him the card of his new Bill Blast Lincoln Continental. Haku takes him, kind of looks at him, and we don't think anything. He loads his bags in. Get in. Jack gets in the passenger side. I get in the back seat. Haku gets in the driver's seat. Haku gets in, he kind of looks over my brother Jack, well, what do I do next? Jack said, hey, now are we going to go? And he said, put the damn keys in the car, Haku. Haku starts the car off, takes off. He's driving now. Granted, he's driving a little erratic. Come to find out, this kid don't have it. He's 16 years old. He don't have a driver's license. He don't know how to drive. He is behind my brother's brand new Lincoln Continental. We get on Highway 60 and we proceed to teach this kid how to drive. What an experience.
Well, Bobby Doe asked us, what is a cool Vince McMahon story? Because a lot of people love to, bash Vince. As anybody who's, in a position of power, people love to take shots at him. What's a cool Vince McMahon story, a heartwarming story?
You sort that out, heartwarming.
Yeah, I'll be happy to, because I saw the question earlier and I thought about it. The best story I've seen on Vince, and you may know the guy. There was an old guy who used to come around when we were in Baltimore, and he'd come in with his bag. He's probably 70-something years old, and he'd come in, and Tim White would always pay him. And I asked Tim, I said, who is that? And apparently Vince told me later who it was, because I asked him later when we were on the plane, who was it? When Vince's dad ran Capital City Wrestling, apparently he was in the hood. It was in a bad neighborhood. This guy took care of him. Vince said that song, Bad Bad Leroy Brown, he said it might as well have been written for this guy. And he said he always took care of Vince Sr., made sure he was safe, made sure everything was fine, the show ran well. And when Vince Sr. passed away, he goes, I'd appreciate if you'd always take care of this guy. So he would show up in Baltimore, and he's probably in his 70s. He'd have his bag with him, and he wasn't going to work, obviously, but they didn't want to embarrass him, just give him money. So they'd show up and say, Alec, I'm sorry, we don't have anything for you, but we want to pay you because you came down today. And that was Vince's way of taking care of him. One time he was late, and Vince pulled him in. He goes, why are you late? And he said, well, my car broke down. So he told Tim White to go buy him a car. And he went out and bought him like a Cadillac or a Lincoln or something. I mean, I just thought it was one of the coolest stories. And to me, that says everything about Vince. Vince takes care of a lot of guys and a lot of people. And that was one thing that Vince took care of that nobody knew about unless you just saw it and knew the right people to ask.
You're exactly right. And I got a story too. It's similar to that. But, I kind of inherited that job of taking care of a lot of these people that Vince wanted to take care of. And I was curious like you, and I'd try to get to the bottom of who is this guy? And, what is he? A lot of guys that Vince had that he would just take care of. And it lasted up until we went computerized tickets, and the cash box office really didn't have that much cash. But some guys would walk in and go get a couple of grand, Brisco, and give it to them. And they weren't looking for money. Maybe they were looking for money. Maybe I was the one that was naive about it. But I'd take care of them. They would, be embarrassed or act embarrassed anyway. But eventually, one time I gave a guy some money. He said, why did you insult him? Like, go get another grand and give to him. But Vince was just like at him. But the story that I got about Vince in this terrible way, we were walking down that Dallas Fort Worth airport when the new one opened up, 25 years ago, whatever it was, 30 years ago, 40 years, whatever it was. It just opened up. Then we were coming back before the days, obviously, of corporate jets and all that stuff, for us anyway. So we were changing planes from Houston to Dallas going to Connecticut. So we walked by, and this guy recognized Vince. Mr. McMahon. He said, I'm at shoe shine. I'm the best in the airport here. So just take 5 minutes and I'll have your shoes shining like they ever shined before. And Vince stopped. He went over, sat down in the chair, and this guy proceeded to give Vince a shoe shine. Vince reached in his pocket. He pulls out a $100 bill, hands to him. Oh, Mr. McMahon, you didn't have to give me that, $5 back there, $3 for a shoe shine, He said, man, and so we started walking. I said, why'd you give him $100? Just curious. He said, I gave him $100. He said, that man will never forget me and never forget the day, and he'll be able to talk about this the rest of his life. He said, I just wanted to give him something he'd be happy with. And I thought that was just so cool. Give him $100.
Yeah, it's amazing when you see Vince did so much stuff. I had a charity golf tournament in Texas one time, and he said, listen, he goes, I'm a bad guy on TV. He goes, I'm going to double whatever money you raise. He goes, but you take credit for it. And he said, I'll fly all the guys in for it. He goes, I appreciate you doing. It's great what you're doing with charity. He goes, but I'm going to double all the money you raise. And he said, but don't let me take credit for it. You take credit for it personally.
Oh. Hey, it's funny too. We've all been there. You've been there probably too many times. Some of these post-match dinners, where he has somebody call Morton Steakhouse or Ruth Chris Steakhouse, closes the place down after hours, keeps the place open for vets, and Vince has about 10 of his associates come in, and we all have a late night dinner at a great steakhouse. Comes time to fill out that tab. A lot of times it's slide over me or over to Bruce. He quits handing it to Bruce because Bruce tipped the guy 25 grand or something like that. Vince wouldn't take it back, and I used to tip, I wouldn't tip enough, he'd say. And he'd take it and he'd cross out mine and he'd usually double mine. But it wasn't unusual for him to leave $1,000 for each employee that stayed after hours at a restaurant to take care of it.
Yeah. It's amazing. I've seen him get off planes and he just hands out $100 bills like candy. It's just, and he's not big shotting because nobody sees it. He just walks up to him and hands it very discreetly. Will hand them, but $100 bills.
Golden handshake, as they used to call it back in the old days.
That's right. Jeff, who's a good friend of ours.
Double J, what now?
Jeff is what he
says. We got a triple J here, Jeff. We have triple J.
Asked me, but it's also a question for you too. Would you change anything? So for me, would you play football longer? Would you have played football instead of wrestling? And for you, would be wrestling. Would you want to go to the Olympics? Would you want to change anything? My answer is easy. I'm happy with the way everything worked out. I wish I could have been healthier in football and played a little longer, but I wouldn't have gotten to wrestling as early. So I'm very happy with everything.
I like the way you end. I wouldn't have got into wrestling so early. You would have eventually found your way over to the business, is what you're saying.
You dang right I would have.
You were hooked up. That's an awesome answer there. I would have. My choice. I certainly wasn't one on an Olympic level. I mean, I when I was a kid, I mean, that was my dream. Wasn't to be a state champion or a national champion. My dream, because I grew up in an area that had 3 Olympic gold medalists. When you walked on those mats, that was your dream of an Olympic gold medalist. And I never got the skill level to be in that category there. But coaching, we all had influences when we were kids, and that a lot of us, that was the first thing we wanted to be. Besides a professional athlete, was a coach. A lot of times, I think, man, because we come into this, or I came in this business, anything with an exit plan. I didn't think I was going to spend 50 damn years in this business. I really did. I thought it was going to be the 10 years and out and back in Pahokee, Oklahoma, coaching and teaching, and being happy the rest of my life. And said I've been in this business and been happy the rest of my life. But I wouldn't change a thing. I'm glad I did it when I did. I got out of school in December, and by January I was wrestling. Because I'd been setting up the ring 2 or 3 years before I actually got into business. And of course, when you're setting up the ring, a lot of the old timers come early. They want to come in the ring and roll around. They'd want you to show them some amateur wrestling in exchange. They'd show you how to work a little bit. So I'd already worked, so I didn't have any formal training when I got out of school. I just called Leroy McGurk and said, "Hey, man, I'm out of school. I'm ready for bookings." And that Monday night, I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I couldn't believe it. So no, I wouldn't change a thing, man.
A couple more questions, but one before we get to the last 2 questions. Your friend Greg, is it Darrow? Your friend that's from Oklahoma that talks to you a lot on Twitter.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. He asked me if I would change the rib I pulled in Oklahoma when I got stretched by Danny Hodge. Because I didn't know Danny Hodge and your brother were coming in. I knew you could stretch me. He did it a million times. But when those guys walked in, I was like, oh my, I'm in so much trouble. And the answer is unequivocally no. I got stretched by Danny Hodge while Jack Brisco was basically rooting him on. So no, that's no.
I knew that'd be your answer. I saw that question too from Gary, and I'm glad Gary posted it. But yeah, Gary, the look on John's face. I mean, he come in and he had the pictures in hand. I mean, he was proud of them. Look here, Brisco, we found your state sign, and I think you found Blackwell exit too, exit
Blackwell
33.
and Stillwater.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
spent
and
all
so
day driving around. Me and Barry
yeah,
Wyndham.
yeah, all day driving around that part of Oklahoma. It took you 10 minutes, you know. So anyway, they were proud picture. They were urinating on our great roadsides there. They had no clue Jack Brisco and Danny Hodge were going to be at the building that day. And so they'd take them and they hung them up in the production room. Now, when you have big shots and celebrities come in, the first place they take them is to the production room to introduce them to the production people and get them passes so nobody is rude to them and kicks them out. So here comes my brother and Danny in together. So of course the production assistant takes them right straight to the production room, and they stand them there while he's getting. And there's the bulletin board where it has all the crap on it and everything. They turn, Jack turns. I could just see Jack turning and his mouth dropping open. And Daddy looks. Oh, they think that's funny, huh? And so they had told the production said, "Who put those up there?" Of course, they stood you off right away. They didn't stooge Ron off. They did stooge Ron off. They stooged you off.
Oh yeah, just me, only me.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I took the picture of myself. That's
yeah.
what the people don't understand. It's like I got so blamed for it, but I couldn't take a picture of myself because it was from behind, waiting like several.
And this is before the days of cell phones, even with selfies, you know.
That's
so,
right.
You could take. So anyway, Hodge demanded that he be taken to whoever's responsible for this. My brother's a great cheerleader for Hodge because he knows the damage that Hodge can do. So and they walk in, and John and I think we're right outside of production. They walk over. The production says, "Mr. Hodge, this is who you wanted to meet." So Danny grabs John's hand. Danny also had a way when he shook your hand, he'd reach around and grab your elbow too. So you were only not only locked in from the handshake, you were locked in from that elbow lock too. There was no moving.
No.
And John,
no.
6'6", 6'7", whatever the hell he is, 320 pounds at that time, just a monster of a man. Poor Daddy, probably 75 years old at the time, and 5'11" and 165 pounds. But he got that death grip on John. You could see John's body kind of tense up, kind of pulling back. But when he was pulling those hands, you could see Danny's hands just get tighter.
It hurt so bad.
And John's eyes started whelping up because he didn't want to cry, but they just so you could tell that he was ready to because his cheeks started getting big and puffing out. And Danny saw that and he said, "You gonna do that again?" "Oh no, sir, Mr. Hodge. No, sir, Mr. Hodge. I'm sorry, Mr. Brisco." And Hodge, let's go over. You can see John just running to the bathroom and cleaning himself up.
He got me so quick and so bad. I couldn't work out for about 2 months on that with that arm. He screwed up my elbow just by grabbing it.
Like, when he grabs that elbow, so 2 fingers, that's all it takes. One on the inside, one on the outside. He finds that point in there. There ain't no escaping that.
The funny part of that story was the Sheik and Rikishi passed us, and the Sheik always thought my name was Brad Shaw. So he yells out the window. He goes, "Mr. Shaw, is everything okay?" And I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Sheik. We're going to the bathroom on Mr. Brisco's hometown." He goes, "Oh, you're such a fine boy, Brad." And he drove up. Crazy story.
I love when he talks to your dad. "Oh, Mr. Shaw, your son Brad, such a nice young."
That's right. My daddy's not smart to the business, Well, I was a little bit, but had no idea what he's talking about. He didn't know why he was calling him Mr. Shaw. "Mr. Shaw, your boy Brad is such a fine young man." Okay, couple more. A real quick one here. Sarah Dunworth, who's one of our good fans, said, "Do we have any pics from the 70s with the butterfly collars and the bell-bottom jeans we talked about with Al Snow?" I have pics, but I don't know where they are.
I don't either. I know.
Okay. Last question.
I'm sorry. We apologize for not being informed on that question.
Yeah, if we find them, Sarah, we will post them.
Yeah.
I promise you. Because I definitely had both, the big lapel and the butterfly jeans.
Yeah. I had the bell bottom jeans. John, I come out of school in the '60s. Or that, I mean, that was, I mean, you can't get any more hippie era than that.
No.
I mean, I had to pay the shirt for my prom. For my prom, I wore a paisley suit. Paisley, but a what they call bleeding mattress or whatever it was back then.
Yeah.
You get them wet and they run all over the damn place. And I was with a girl with white prom dress on, and she wouldn't even let me put my arm around her after a while, because every time I touched her, I had I couldn't go rent one of those $100 ones. I had to go rent the $5 ones because we didn't have the money. And you talk about running and saying those little $5 tucks, man. Those it was a hard time keeping a date, especially if you want to put your arm around her, snuggle up to her a little bit, because you'd leave the arm stain, on her. So anyway, that's what I wore. And I wore those bell bottom pants, and 2-inch belt, and those damn Don Morocco. Our brother Don Morocco, he wore those damn high heels. You remember those big?
Oh yeah.
His had to be like Doink the Clown or something like that. His were like 6 foot tall. I mean, 6 inches tall. Don, you're already 6'6". Now you're 7 foot plus. And man, he looked like, but he loved those damn platforms. I tried to get one time. My nose bled, man. It's got me up there so high.
Vader had he wore lifts in his regular tennis shoes, because Vader wasn't that tall. He was a big guy, lovely on, but he wore lifts in his shoes because he was kind of sensitive about his height. Because I always said how big he was, but he wasn't that tall. So we used to take one of his lifts and we'd hide it in Ricky Morton's bag. And Ricky finally came to us. He goes, "You're going to get me killed."
Yeah.
And Leon never sold it. He'd wear it and he'd walk. One lift with God. He'd walk where he wasn't selling it. Never said a word. I'm so glad he didn't find out it was us. Our kill Ricky. Okay,
our kill Ricky. I mean, what an athletic guy that damn Vader was. I mean, Vader. We toss his name around, but we had a lot of fun with Leon. But we had a lot of respect also for Leon, just being a sure athlete, and we just know the effort. A man that size doing some of the things that he was doing defies the laws of gravity. I mean, the guy was just a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, and his biggest matches, some of his early matches with Sting were just amazing. The matches he had in Japan were amazing. By the time he came to WWE, he was a little long in the tooth. It wasn't quite the same Vader that was there. He'd had a lot of really stiff, hard matches, and he was older and he'd been hurt by that time. It wasn't quite the same Vader that you saw back in the early 90s, late 80s. That was just one of the best big men of all time.
Yeah, that's a good point there. You're the great technical guy of the group. Write that down. We ought to show some Vader clips on the best of the best stories.
Yeah, that's right.
Brisco and Bradshaw.
Because he had some matches with Sting that were they were amazing.
And really some of those Japan matches too were just unbelievable. It'd be fun going through the old YouTube files on Vader and just checking out some of the matches and just enjoying his ability.
And by the way, for commercial for Best of the Best on our YouTube channel, we go over old matches and talk about them and talk about the history of them. You can check them out on our YouTube channel. Last question, and I can't pronounce this gentleman's name. He's from Sportskeeda. I met him in person in India. Riju Dasgupta, I believe.
Way to go, John. Way to go.
I believe is the gentleman. Really nice guy. He does a lot of interviews. Works with Sportskeeda. I met him over there when I was working with Slum Soccer and some groups. And Lee Gibson both asked the same thing. Going into the Hall of Fame, any favorite Undertaker story that isn't widely known? Our favorite Undertaker story.
I got one. I don't know if he was on the tour with the first Kuwaiti tour that we went over to Kuwait, where we went scuba diving in the Red Sea.
No, I don't think I was. I think I was on the Africa tour before that, and I didn't go on to the Kuwait tour. I don't think.
Okay. Well, anyway, we had that tour, and we were like 5 days in that same hotel. And I think actually 8 days in that same hotel. And this is just immediately after the the war there, and we were staying in a hotel that was damaged by mortar shells there. But we were told not to go anywhere, not to do anything. Just and granted, it was a beautiful one of those beautiful luxury hotels that the host puts you into while you're over in that part of the world. So we were getting kind of bored. So I'm a scuba diver, and so the Red Sea is one place where it was on my bucket list, to go scuba diving in the Red Sea. Actually, it wasn't the Red Sea; it was the Persian Gulf, where I'm the one part of the country, right part of the country, just across the desert there, the Persian Gulf, and they had dumped a bunch of warplanes in the Gulf like they normally do after war to keep the enemy from taking them apart and stealing the technology. So I'd read about that, so I want to go diving. So who am I going to get a diving partner? So I look around. There's Brian Adams. He's a Hawaiian, so I figured, he was a diver. So there was a Duke the Dumpster from Miami. He's from Miami. He's at least around the water. He's not going to be fearful of the water because it's so totally different. So I go around and I ask Mark, hey Mark, if I put together a dive trip, do you guys want to go? So he said, yeah. And so I finally got about 15 to 20 of the guys, just about the entire car. There's a couple of guys that didn't go because they were just afraid to go out on the boat, afraid to go in the water. So we went out. So we're out in the middle of the damn Persian Gulf, and all of a sudden the thought hit me: what am I going to do if one of these guys drowned? So I'm the only one that's really experienced diver. Brian been diving, so in Hawaii, and he was a sports fisherman, a spear fisherman. So, but he mostly free dove and not with the tank. So, and Duke's the same way. So, like I said, hey guys, the ones that don't know how to dive, let's divvy up the partners of groups of four. So I had 4 with this guy, 4 with that guy, 4 with me. I had an undertaker with me, and so I had this old camera that actually could take pictures, 20 foot underwater, 25 foot underwater. So I actually have a picture somewhere in my files, and I'm gonna dig it up one day. Undertaker laying on the Persian Gulf, on the floor of the Persian Gulf, and doing his setup. And that's the most cool thing I got. But I got pictures of us all on that boat getting ready to dive. But the thought come across, man, if we have an accident out here, one of these guys, Vince, is going to fire my ass, and I ain't ever going nowhere again. But Mark is such a natural, but he's such a leader. Reason I'm telling that story, he was such a leader on that deal. He kind of got me kind of rested in the mind, to worry about it. He said, we're sticking with you. We'll follow you. And he looked at everybody. Don't go into business on your own. Stick in your groups there. So he was such a leader, on in the ring, in the dressing room, and a pleasure setting too. He's just that type of person where he's a leader.
Yeah, and he led by example. We were in London that time when he got his ear halfway cut off or whatever it was.
Right, yeah.
He should have gone to the hospital right then.
No kidding.
But if he did, we were going to miss the charter window to get back to the States. And so he got all fixed up, and they kind of sedated him a little bit.
That was brutal. Wasn't it?
Oh, and he got on the plane and flew all the way back across the ocean so that he could have surgery on that ear. It had to be killing him, just so the rest of the crew didn't have to spend the night. I mean, he took a medical chance by doing the right thing for the rest of the crew. I always thought that was, you wonder why people talk about the respect and being a leader. He led by example. He was the guy he was the right guy, and still is.
Right guy. He's the right guy to be the leader in that Hall of Fame too.
Yeah. As I said, it's it's kind of like, you compare him to other Hall of Famers, doesn't seem fair. You need to compare him to guys like a Babe Ruth, a Jim Brown,
a guy it's mainstream sports. You're right. I mean,
that's right.
This guy transcended our sport and became a pop cultural icon across the world. And in our lifetime, like I posted something the other day. He's a once in a lifetime talent, and we're so fortunate that it was our lifetime that he appeared in.
Yeah, 100%. That's why, when you compare them to guys, you need to compare them to guys who are other pillars of industry or cornerstones of Hall of Fames and other places. Because, that was from being a main event from Hulk Hogan to Roman Reigns. That's a span that I don't think anybody will ever match again.
No, be hard.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brisco. That is our question and answer session. We didn't get to all of them. We apologize, but we will in the future, or we will do another one and do it again. So you can get all of our stuff on anywhere you get podcasts, also on our YouTube channel. We had a wonderful show this week with Bill DeMott that nobody will ever see because I screwed it up.
And John, get over it, man. I mean, and you know what? You're right. You did screw it up, and you know what? It was probably one of our best episodes we ever had.
It was really good. It was really good. Bill is such a. I guarantee if we can get Bill back on and get him to tell the same stuff, you'll come away with it really liking Bill DeMott, just like we do, because we know it.
Well, we liked him before anyway.
Yeah, we liked him. It's the first time we met him.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. See you next week.